Today I wanted to return to the Aryan Sun Myths book and go over Appendix A, which is an explanation of the fable in which the sun is worshipped under the name of Christ. So I find this very interesting. Again, with the amount of resets we've had throughout the dawn of time, there's no telling where the origins of the stories we have today and that are popularized today come from. They could come from anywhere. It could be 10,000 years, 5,000 years, a million years old that these stories are coming from. They could be from myths. They could be from reality. They could be from literal translations. They could be from fantasies. There could be worlds and powers that we have no idea about. So what we think now as myth and our world tells us, oh, that's myth, that's fairy tale, could have been real at some point because we really don't know. All we know is that they have lied to us for a long time, and our present time is not nearly as advanced as our ancient times. That we know for sure, and we are finding it out the hard way, every day, while we discover how beautiful this ancient world was, and how magical it was, and how connected it was to the universe, the celestials, the world, reality, the elements. Everything was in harmony at one point in time, and we are just seeing artistic glimpses of the remnants of these creative visionaries of our past world that inhabited our planet and could be giants, could be anything, different species, different hybrids. They could be our creators. We have no idea. We are just here in this little plot, this little tiny realm of this massive realm, which we have been lied to about its size. So there are so many things up there with the celestials, so many different explanations for how the processes work. I wanted to take you back in time as we look at some throughout the ages, because these are really cool ancient takes on the sun rising, the yearly passage of everything, the Virgin Mary, the celestial stars, the constellations, everything, all incorporated into this. So take a listen, take from it what you will. I'm going to show the text here, and then I'm going to go into the art, and the art is great. A lot of Kirchner and other artists from the time that show a lot of different dimensions of reality in our world. And feel free to take a look at these books and read it on your own, or you can listen to me now. Here we go. Appendix A, an explanation of the fable in which the sun is worshipped under the name of Christ. It is a fact that at the hour of midnight on the 25th of December, in the centuries when Christianity made its appearance, the celestial sign which rose at the horizon, in the ascendant of which presided at the opening of the new solar revolution, was the Virgin of the constellations. It is another fact that the god sun, born at the winter solstice, is reunited with her and surrounds her with his luster at the time of our feast of the Assumption, or the reunion of mother and son. And still another fact is that when she comes out heliacally from the solar rays at that moment, we celebrate her appearance in the world, or her nativity. It is but natural to suppose that those who personified the sun and who made it pass through the various ages of the human life, who imagined for it a series of wonderful adventures sung either in poems or narrated in legends, did not fail to draw its horoscopes, the same as horoscopes were drawn for other children at the precise moment of their birth. This was especially the custom of the Chaldeans and of the Magi. Afterwards, this feast was celebrated under the name of Dies Natalis, or Feast of the Birthday. Now, the celestial virgin, who presided at the birth of the god Day, personified, was presumed to be his mother, and thus fulfill the prophecy of the astrologer who had said, "A virgin shall conceive and bring forth." In other words, that she shall give birth to the god-son, like the Virgin of Sais. From this idea are derived the pictures which are delineated in the sphere of the Magi, of which Abu Mazar has given us a description, and of which Kircher, Selden, the famous Pick, Roger, Bacon, Albert the Great, Blyon, Stoeffler, and a great many others have spoken. We have to take a look at those. We are extracting here the passage from Abu Mazar. We see, says Abu Mazar, in the first decan, or in the first 10 degrees of the sign of the Virgin, according to the traditions of the ancient Persians, Chaldeans, Egyptians, of Hermes, and of Aesculapius, a young maiden called in the Persian language Seklanidos de Darzama, a name when translated into Arabian by that of Adranadasa, signifies a chaste, pure, and immaculate virgin of a handsome figure, agreeable countenance, long hair, and modest mien. She holds in her hand 2 ears of corn. She sits on a throne. She nourishes and suckles a babe, which some call Jesus and the Greeks call Christ. The Persian Sphere, published by Scaliger as a sequel of his notes on Manilius, gives about the same description of the celestial virgin, but there is no mention made of the child which she suckles. It places alongside of her a man, which can only be Bootes, the constellation, called the foster father of the son of the virgin Isis, or of Horus. The sun is neither born nor does it die, but in the relation which the days engendered by it have with the nights, there is in this world a progressive gradation of increase and decrease, which has originated some very ingenious fictions amongst the ancient theologians. They have assimilated this generation, this periodical increase and decrease of the day, to that of man, who, after having been born, grown up, and reached manhood, degenerates and decreases until he has finally arrived at the term of the career allotted to him by nature to travel over. The god of day, personified in the sacred allegories, had therefore to submit to the whole destiny of man. He had his cradle and his tomb. He was a child at the winter solstice, at the moment when the days begin to grow. Under this form they exposed his image in the ancient temples, in order to receive the homage of his worshippers. Because, says Macrobius, the day being then the shortest, this god seems to be yet a feeble child. This is the child of the mysteries, he whose image was brought out from the recesses of their sanctuaries by the Egyptians every year on a certain day. This is the child of which the goddess of Sais claimed to be the mother in that famous inscription where these words could be read: "The fruit which I have brought forth is the sun. This is the feeble child, born in the midst of the darkest night, of which this virgin of Sais was delivered about the winter solstice, according to Plutarch." In an ancient Christian work called The Chronicle of Alexandria, I want to check that, occurs the following, quote, "Watch how Egypt has constructed the childbirth of a virgin, in the birth of her son, who was exposed in a crib to the adoration of her people." The sun, being the only redeemer of the evils which winter produces, and presumed in the sacerdotal fictions to be born at the solstice, must remain yet 3 months more in the inferior regions. In the regions affected by evil and darkness, and there be subject to their ruler before it makes the famous passage of the vernal equinox, which assures its triumph overnight, and which renews the face of the earth. They must therefore make him live during all that time exposed to all the infirmities of mortal life, until he has resumed the rights of divinity in his triumph. And that's from a book called Origin of All Religions. In the National Library, there is an Arabian manuscript containing the 12 signs, delineated and colored, in which is a young child alongside of the Virgin, being represented in about the same style as our virgins, and like an Egyptian Isis and her son. In the first decade of the Virgin rises a maid, called in Arabic Ad-dur-en-Nadessa, that is, pure immaculate virgin, graceful in person, charming in countenance, modest in habit, with loosened hair, holding in her hand 2 ears of wheat, sitting upon an embroidered throne, nursing a boy, and rightly feeding him in the place called Hebrae. A boy, I say, named Iesus, by certain nations, which signifies Issa, whom they also call Christ in Greek. That's from Kircher, who's actually drawing these pictures that you see right now, in Oedipus and Aegypticus. Quote, "The celestial virgin was represented in the Indian zodiac of Sir William Jones with ears of corn in one hand and the lotus in the other. In Kircher's zodiac of Hermes, she has corn in both hands. In other planispheres of the Egyptian priests, she carries ears of corn in one hand and the infant Horus in the other. In Roman Catholic countries, she is generally represented with the child in one hand and the lotus or lily in the other. In Montfaucon's work, Volume 2, she is represented as a female nursing a child with ears of corn in her hand in the legend Iao. She is seated on clouds. A star is at her head. The reading of the Greek letters from right to left shows this to be very ancient. And that's from a book called Bible Myths. Mr. Cox tells us in the book called Aryan Myths that with scarcely an exception all the names by which the virgin goddess of the Acropolis was known point to the mythology of the dawn. In Grecian mythology, Theseus was said to have been born in Aethra, the pure air, Oedipus of Iocaste, the violet light of morning. Perseus was born of the virgin Danae and was called the son of the bright morning. In Io, the mother of the sacred bull, the mother also of Hercules, we see the violet-tinted morning. We read in the Vishnu Purana that the son of Achyuta, God the imperishable, rose in the dawn of Devaki to cause the lotus petal of the universe, Krishna, to expand. Wow. On the day of his birth, the quarters of the horizon were irradiate with joy. It's the quarters of the horizon. Nuts. I love the Rig Vedas, but here we go. Last paragraph. As the hour of the sun's birth draws near, the mother becomes more beautiful, her form more brilliant, while the dungeon is filled with a heavenly light, as when Zeus came to Danae in a golden shower. Meteors? We read in the Proto-Evangelion Apocrypha that when Christ was born, on a sudden there was a great light in the cave, so that their eyes could not bear it. Nearly all of the sun gods are represented as having been born in a cave or a dungeon. This is the dark abode from which the wandering sun starts in the morning. At his birth, a halo of serene light encircles his cradle as the sun appears at early dawn, in the east in all its splendor. In the words of the Veda, quote, "Will the powers of darkness be conquered by the god of light? And when the sun rose, they wondered how, just born, he was so mighty. And they said, let us worship again the child of heaven, the son of strength, Arusha, the bright light of the sacrifice. He rises as a mighty flame. He stretches out his wide arms. He is even like that the wind. His light is powerful, and his mother, the dawn, gives him the best share, the first worship among men." In the Rig Veda, he is spoken of as stretching out his arms in the heavens to bless the world and to rescue it from the terror of darkness. All of the sun gods forsake their homes and virgin mothers and wander through different countries doing marvelous things. Finally, at the end of their career, the mother, from whom which they were parted long before, is by their side to cheer them in their last hours. Also, the tender maidens are there, the beautiful lights which flush the eastern sky as the sun sinks in the west. The sun is frequently spoken of as having been born of the dusky mother, the early dawn being dark or dusky. The Mexican virgin goddess Xochitl Quetzal, the holding up of the roses, is represented by Lord Kingsborough as receiving a bunch of flowers from the ambassador in the picture of the Annunciation. This brings to mind a curious tradition of the Mohammedans respecting the birth of Christ. They say that he was the last of the prophets who was sent by God to prepare the way for Muhammad, and that he was born of the Virgin by the smelling of a rose. So, wow, what an incredible collection of different myths, theories, stories of legends all throughout time that point to, our time, the Christmas time, as being something that is treasured throughout all of the ages and started off as something so much more powerful than just getting presents and Santa and reindeer and stuff like that. Something so different, so divine that the powers that be in our realm had to completely obliterate its magic and turn it into something materialistic, something useless, something childlike, something fantasy-like. All of these things have been done during our time to ensure that whenever we see or hear the word myth, we immediately associate it with fairy tale, nonsense, garbage coming from an ancient people that knew nothing. They don't have computers, they don't have Facebook, they must have been worthless. Although they dedicated their time, all of it, to doing things that progressed humanity and progressed themselves and kept their families perpetuating, and God knows what. We don't know if the people of the past that are like us were pets of giants that built all the masterful civilizations, created all of the things. There might have been a time when all these myths were being visualized and they were being acted out. Even when I was reading this, I began to think that, maybe even the constellations have faded. Maybe there is something at one point in time that made these images of the constellations appear even more vivid. Because when we look at them now, it's tough to see with all the stars. It's tough to point out the shape of a virgin or the shape of a lion or the shape of a bear. But maybe at some point in the distant past when all the stars were visible, it was more apparent. Maybe it was even visual like that. I'm not suggesting that is a fact, but everything I put out here is theories coming from the imagination and just a creative visionary mindset, trying to piece these images and artworks with our just void modern reality that is completely void of all this magic, completely targeted for removal. This magic was targeted for removal. That's why when you see everyone around you and they speak in words that they think are very powerful and they have all these concepts that they're so sure of and they're so proud of and they're so happy for, you have to wonder, is that, what are they receiving divine powers, or are they delusional, or whatever? Because everything we know of and have heard of at this point in time is a controlled information. The World Economic Forum is already talking about how in 2030 no one will own anything and they'll all like it. They are basically planning a reset, and it's so similar to all these other ones. At some point in our distant time, 100 or so years ago, more maybe 100 to 200 years ago, some group of people had the same idea. We will take all this ancient stuff from them, and we will make the people believe what we tell them to believe, and they will have no clue about the past, to the point of when they see something from the past, they will just absolutely shrug it off. And if you can convince the population that they are superior to everyone in the past, and time has progressed and humanity has progressed in that positive upward slope, then they will look at the ancient world as trash and as nonsense. And that's what they've done. The education system deliberately steers everyone in the wrong direction, as do the three-letter agencies of the governments. They know what the humans are capable of if they discover their full potential. If we discover that we need to see the stars, maybe there's information we can gain from them. Maybe there's something up there that we need, instead of living in a world where light pollution in 95% of the human inhabited areas blocks out the sky. I can see about 7 stars from where I am sometimes, and it's pathetic. And you can go in other places, and I remember being able to go in the woods before and seeing the Milky Way, or whatever that stuff is, or the clouds, and you can't see that stuff anymore. And I remember when I was young, it used to have color. Remember, I was in the Grand Canyon once, and it had like a pinkish hue and all these different colors. Last time I saw it a few years ago, it had no color. Totally devoid. So what are they doing up there? What is so important about all these celestial events that they had to just completely mind erase us, and just completely give us native eternal amnesia as to what we are truly capable of, what we came from, what the people of the past were, what they all did, and what our true potential is. So I hope you all take this with a grain of salt, and it's interesting to see how many different ancient religions have come across and redefined and re-envisioned or imagined the things that a lot of our population just takes as solid, full-blown truths. So you got to take everything with a little bit of care and gentleness. Who knows what is real? I sure don't, but I love embracing all the potentials, all the possibilities, and I love hearing ancients so much more than I love hearing modern people. I'm sure you all do as well. Bless you all.